Hello! So, something you may not know about me is that I love storytelling. It is one of my biggest passions in life, right above storing inconceivable amounts of World of Warcraft facts in my brain space. And over the years, this passion for storytelling has been expressed in many ways. Anyone who knows me even a little bit knows that I love writing. I've, dabbled in art a little bit over the years. Those are the typical ways that one would express a passion for storytelling. There's also the Sims games. Okay. At some point, I want to make a video talking about how I think the Sims games are just the perfect vessel for storytelling, but that is not what this video today is about. I am here today, essentially, to gossip about the lives of my Sims and the dramas I am essentially forcing them to go through as their omnipotent god. This is a fun video, and this is a silly video, so I invite you to join me with a cup of tea or your preferred hot beverage as I just gossip about everything that my Sims have been getting up to over the past 3 weeks. That's still pretty hot. So, for a long time now, I have been wanting to do a proper rotational save. If you don't know, rotational gameplay in The Sims is where you don't just stick with one household or family. It's where you start with one and you play it for a little bit and then you move on to another household and then maybe another household and you just keep sort of rotating around these different households. It lets you explore more characters and build a wider story that's more sort of interconnected between all of these different Sims. It's great if you've been playing in that save for a while and your initial Sim has a bunch of children and you want to go and explore all of their stories and lives without just keeping everyone in the same household. But that's not the case here. We're starting with a fresh save. I debated a bit for a while about which town to go with because I knew that I wanted to stick within one specific town. And eventually I settled on Oasis Springs because even though Oasis Springs is one of the base game towns and has some of the most iconic NPCs in it, I don't actually spend a lot of time playing there. So to start off our journey, I made just a pretty basic, typical starter Sim. Her name is Paige, and she is a struggling artist who just wants to make her own way in the world, selling her paintings and her pottery. She lives in the Bedrock Strait neighborhood, the super cheap starter one in Oasis Springs. She works part-time as a barista next door at the Reed and Bean, which was a pre-made lot that came with businesses and hobbies, but wasn't actually put into the game. It's one of those ones that Maxis makes and just puts in the gallery and you can place yourself if you want to. I thought it fit great there in Oasis Springs, so I put it there. Her friends at this stage are Edgar, who runs the Reed and Bean, so he's also her boss, Mitchell Kalani, and Nina Caliente. Side note, Nina and Dina Caliente are both aliens in my save, and we're just going with it. Don't question it. It's fine. Everything's fine. So the way I've been structuring things in terms of the actual rotational aspect of this is I wanted to just do it where I spend a week in a household and then jump to the next. Honestly, in this first week with Paige, not a lot happened, and I didn't really expect a lot to happen because it's the first week with a new Sim. There's only so much drama that can go down in the first week. There was a lot of painting, a lot of pottery, a lot of going to the gym, a lot of going to the bar, a lot of going to work. There were a couple of interesting points in her interactions with other Sims. She met Dina Caliente, Johnny Zest, and who else was it? Jay Huntington III, and she didn't like any of them to begin with because I have the first impressions mod. And in particular, her relationship with Jay Huntington III is key to keep in mind, so they don't get along right from the get-go. Keep that in your mind. Paige wasn't having much luck selling her paintings on Plopsy, which is the Sims version of Etsy that I think came with the nifty knitting pack, maybe? So she decides to start just camping out outside the gym and selling her work more directly, which does actually work. She sells a painting to Edgar, her boss and also friend, which I thought was super cute because he's supporting her dreams. And she also sold one to Babs Lamour, who is one of my favorite Sims ever, and I'm always looking for literally any excuse to put her into the game. But I thought it was nice that she bought a painting from Paige because when the two of them met, Paige liked her, but Babs did not like Paige, which was interesting. but also like they're neighbors, so I guess it was very cute, like neighborly behavior. Okay, so the most interesting part of this week that I spent with Paige was her relationship with Mitchell. So I mentioned before, Mitchell is one of her friends, and the two of them like bonded straight away. Mitchell was the first person to come and like welcome her to the neighborhood, and they'd been like inseparable ever since. She actually got the adoring sentiment for him, which I thought was so sweet. And then on a Sunday morning, after a wild night of partying, the two of them went out for breakfast at the diner that's like next to Mitchell's house. Because, you know, who doesn't love like greasy diner food after a big night out? And the two of them were just chatting completely normally, and she had this sudden moment where she realized that she kind of like liked him. And the two of them started flirting over their greasy diner breakfast. And now I did originally have another sim in mind to be Paige's love interest, but I just thought they looked so cute. And I'm, you know, my preferred way of playing Sims is to just go with the weird things that the game does automatically, because I think it's more fun to just like embrace the chaos of it all. Anyway, that happened right at the end of my week with Paige, and so I was like, well, if I'm moving on to another household, it makes sense to move straight on to Mitchell. So jumping into Mitchell's perspective, we pick up with him right as he's leaving the diner after their breakfast together. Mitchell Kalani is working as a dishwasher. We love a hospo king, but he has aspirations of becoming a comedian. He is part of the Roomies household, so he lives with, oh, can I remember off the top of my head? Zoe Patel, Gavin Richards, and Jay Huntington III. When I went and looked in the relationships panel to see like what the vibe was in this household and see how everyone's dynamics were, oh boy howdy was I in for a treat. So Mitchell is obviously into Paige, we know this, but he's also into his roommate and best friend, Jay Huntington III. But like in the game terms, it's just like attraction at the moment. It's not an actual romantic relationship, but I thought that was very interesting. I filed that away for later. And Mitchell also had bad compatibility with Gavin, and Gavin was crushing on Zoe. So it's like everyone in this household has some sort of weird dynamic going on with each other, and it was very interesting. So after a couple of days of playing, Mitchell got a promotion. He's a caterer now rather than a dishwasher. Very cute. And he took Paige out on a fancy dinner date to celebrate. So they had their first date, which led into their first kiss, and it was very, very cute. But since he has different days off now, Mitchell decided to throw a keg party on the Wednesday night. All his roommates are there, obviously. The Caliente sisters are there, and Paige is there, and it's a great time. Everyone's having a lot of fun. And Mitchell has a lot to drink, because apparently the hosting duties include doing a keg stand. Don't look at me, it's what the game asked me to do. So at this point, Mitchell's like kinda wasted, and he starts dancing with everyone, he starts smooching with Paige, and then Paige, she goes outside to make herself a drink, and while she's outside, Mitchell drunkenly starts flirting with Jay, and Paige sees this happen through the window. So she's obviously not happy about this. Her and Mitchell aren't officially together, they've just been on one date, but in like the game mechanics terms, this is enough for them to have a strong romantic relationship, and so Paige immediately wants to end it. But Mitchell is like begging her forgiveness, and it all works out in the end, and Paige doesn't leave and everything's fine. The next day, Paige invites Mitchell on another fancy pants date to the restaurant, and Mitchell, ooh, he's going through it. Because not only is he like gloriously hungover at this point, he's also very confused. Because, you know, he really likes Paige, they're really good together, you know, they've just started developing this relationship and he's super into her. But he remembers what happened last night, and now he has all of these confusing feelings for his best friend that he's never explored before. Paige, for her part, completely oblivious to all of this. She just thinks like, oh, that was just him being stupid while he was drunk, and Mitchell's there having a crisis like, what if I wasn't being stupid? And he has no idea what Jay thinks about any of this, because he was so busy trying to make sure that Paige didn't like break up with them last night that he didn't really have time to stop for like an are we actually more than friends sort of conversation with Jay. So Paige ends up coming over later on, but Mitchell is still at work, so Paige is just hanging out with his roommates, it's all completely fine. But then, out of nowhere, Paige and Jay start beefing with each other. Jay starts arguing with her about her career, which I sort of interpreted to be him like saying, you're not good enough for Mitchell, you don't even have a real job, you're just a barista and a struggling artist. So Mitchell gets home as Paige is like storming out, and he's like, whoa, what's going on? And Paige explains. Oh, there was also like some incident with fireworks, and so Paige is like really burnt while this is happening. Listen, I wasn't controlling Paige at this point. Things were just happening and I wasn't controlling any of it. But like Paige explains what's going on and Mitchell is so conflicted, but in that moment he decides that the right thing to do is to make things official with Paige and, you know, choose her and commit to her. He was drunk the other night. It probably doesn't mean anything. I mean, like, the amount of times I saw Mitchell and Jay autonomously like flirting with each other without me having any input, you're not fooling anyone. But regardless of that, Mitchell asks Paige to be his girlfriend, like officially, and it's very cute. Oh my god. Then the next morning, so the Roomies household is a household of 4 Sims, right? Because I was just trying to focus on Mitchell, I wasn't really controlling the other Sims as much, unless they were, you know, being weird and, oh, they kept going into Mitchell's room in the middle of the night to use his TV, which would wake him up. So I was making sure everyone was like going to bed at night. But other than that, I was mostly just playing with Mitchell and having the rest of them do their own thing autonomously. So the morning after this, I was looking around the house for Jay because I couldn't find him, and I saw he was sitting on Mitchell's bed alone in his pajamas, just looking really, really sad. And I lost my mind. I don't know why he was in there, but he was, oh, poor guy was really in his feelings. So Paige comes over and Mitchell is super excited because, you know, new girlfriend, he's so excited to spend time with her, you know. And like, I reckon with the excitement of all of this, he's sort of able to push down all of the feelings he may or may not have for his best friend. Okay, but then Paige comes up to Mitchell and asks to be his best friend. Now, okay, I know that this sounds very, very primary school. Like the drama of officially declaring who your best friend is. But in terms of the game mechanics, this is a very big deal. Your sim can only have one best friend. And Mitchell's best friend, as we know, is Jay. So when Paige asks this, Mitchell says no. And let me tell you, Paige was not happy about this. Especially after the party, she's now second guessing everything. She's now wondering, maybe that wasn't such stupid drunken behavior. They seem to be a bit closer than I gave them credit for. And then they get the strained relationship dynamic. And oh my god, this was brilliant. It kept giving Mitchell a moodlet saying that because of this strained relationship dynamic, he was having trouble thinking straight. And ain't that the truth of it all? The next day, Mitchell gets promoted again, and he's super excited, as you would be, and he goes straight home to tell Jay all about it, only to find that Jay, for his part, has been dealing with all of these very confusing emotional feelings and relationships by casually hooking up with his friend Babs Lamore, which Mitchell has feelings about, and he doesn't understand why he has feelings about this, because it shouldn't matter who Jay's hooking up with, because Mitchell, is literally dating Paige. Goodness gracious. Anyway, later that night, Mitchell decides that him and Jay need to have an actual conversation about this because they still haven't. And they're chatting, and Mitchell confesses that he does feel something for Jay, but he doesn't know what that means, and he doesn't want to be feeling anything for Jay because he's with Paige, and this whole thing is so confusing, but at the end of the day, he can't deny that something is there. And Jay is like, well, you know, it could be nothing. Or it could be something. And the moment gets very charged, and then all of a sudden they're smooching about it. And I'm sure that won't have any consequences. The next morning, Mitchell is out for a run to clear his head, and who does he quite literally run into? Paige! of course. And she is so happy to see him. Oh no. Mitchell doesn't really say much because, you know, what can he say at that point? He doesn't know what to do. He likes both of them so much and he doesn't know how to choose between them. Oh my god, then in the afternoon, right as I was coming up to the end of my week with Mitchell, he was in the kitchen making some coffee before his shift because he does like night shifts. And Jay walks in, fresh out of the pool, in his fucking Speedos. And Mitchell, like, so obviously checks him out. And then Jay turns around and like looks at him over his shoulder as if to like give him a better view. And oh my god, I just love when the game does stupid things like this. It's like, I didn't make that happen. I just got to sit there and watch it and lose my mind. That was the end of my week with Mitchell, and that was, wow. Perhaps I jinxed myself thinking that like there hadn't really been very much drama with Paige's week, and so then when I moved on to Mitchell, it was just drama after drama. I think in these videos it would be good to do 3 weeks of a rotation. I feel like that's a good number. It's my lucky number. That's not relevant. 3 weeks. So I was debating over who to do for the 3rd week, you know, like should I stay in that household and look at Jay's perspective? Should I do someone else completely random? And then I had a hunch. I had a little hymn to myself and I was like, I think for this week, I want to go and hang out with Babs Lamour, love of my life. So Babs is working as an assistant dishwasher, but has dreams to become an author and write her own books, but she feels like she doesn't really have the smarts to do that. She's friends with Jay, as we know, they're quite close friends. She's also like really good friends with Katrina Caliente, mother of Dina and Nina, which I don't know why, and I just think that relationship's really cute. Babs is living in the cutest little residential rental in Bedrock Strait, and her neighbors are Don Lothario and a fairy I made called Dusty, who might be the other love of my life if I'm being honest. I was just making a random sim to fill the other empty apartment, and then I accidentally ended up making, I think, my favorite sim of all time. He's so lovely. We take control of Babs, and she's feeling a little bit queasy, and oh boy howdy, what do you know, my suspicions were right, and Babs is pregnant after her recent escapades with Jay. So she goes over to Jay's place to tell him the news, and oh my god, he is not happy about all of this. And Babs is like, well, you know, what do you think about having kids and like being involved? And he's like, bro, I don't want to have kids ever. Literally ever. I don't really want anything to do with this. And Babs takes this surprisingly well. Like, they're still really, really good friends. And she's just sort of like, okay, we should probably stick to just being friends though, in light of this. She doesn't know anything about what's happening with Mitchell. There's a wasp on my window. Please don't come inside. I will cry. So on Babs's final day of working before going on family leave, she gets a promotion, which is so good because she does not have a lot of money and she needs to somehow get some baby supplies. So even though she's living in like a really, really small 1-bedroom apartment, she turns the 1-bedroom into an adorable little nursery and ends up getting like a Murphy bed for herself to sleep out in the lounge. It's not much, but it'll do. Oh my god, speaking of her tiny apartment, when she's in her 3rd trimester, she's just like out for a walk on the street and runs into Jay, and the two of them are just like chatting, and then suddenly there's an explosion at her apartment. It's one of the random events you can get when you're in a residential rental, and then her entire kitchen is on fire all of a sudden. She like calls the landlord, and the landlord's taking ages to show up, and she really needs to pee, and so she ends up going to Dusty's apartment next door to see if she can use his bathroom, and then while the two of them are just like chatting afterwards, she goes into labor! Everything's happening. I should mention, if you're not familiar with the way that pregnancies in Sims work, they're literally 3 days, so if you think this is moving really fast, that's just how it is. So Dusty is able to drop her off at the hospital but isn't able to stay, and so Babs is just there having this baby alone. Oh no! their baby is a girl, and she ends up naming her Scarlet. And she's so excited, but then the two of them get home and the stove is still on fire. The landlord hasn't fixed it yet. So she calls the landlord again and is like, hello, my kitchen is on fire and I have a newborn baby. And the landlord shows up and it's Nancy Landgrab, of course. And Nancy fixes the stove, but then later on when she's cooking, it catches fire again. Unrelated to the explosion, she just manages to set her grilled cheese on fire or whatever it was she was cooking. And then later that night, a burglar shows up and Babs is just having the worst luck in the world. Poor thing. But none of these issues seem to bother little baby Scarlet, who is just peacefully sleeping through all of the chaos. Out of the blue, Dusty hits her up and wants to be friends. I use the club system from Get Together to make little friend groups for each of the Sims because I find that easier to just organize. Like anytime they're going out, you can just start a club gathering and all of her friends will show up and it just works really well. So she gets a little pop-up of Dusty asking if he can like join her friend group, which I just thought was very cute. Oh my god. And while she was out with all of her friends, you know, chatting and dancing with Dusty, I looked in the background and I saw Jay sitting at the bar chatting to Mitchell, and I have no idea what they were talking about, but I saw it and was like, see you. Anyway, whilst they're at the bar, Babs very briefly meets Johnny Zest, and the two of them kind of hit it off, and then she gets home and she's got like a little social bunny notification of Johnny wanting to be added to her friends list, which was intriguing. Then the final like notable event we have comes on the Friday night. Babs was thinking about going out when all of a sudden, Don Lothario and Dusty knock on her door, just like randomly, and ask if she wants to hang out. So she decides to stay in with the two of them and order pizza and watch a movie rather than going out. But then Don left like right away. He just gapped it, so it was just Babs and Dusty. And the two of them were having a great time. They got all sorts of little lovely sentiments about each other. And now at this point there hasn't been any hints of like anything more between the two of them, but I'm not ruling it out because I think they would be very cute together. And I'm not at all biased in the fact that they are just two of my favorite Sims ever. We might just have like a bit of a slow burn on our hands, which is, you know, probably good because Babs has literally just had a baby. But that concludes the first 3 weeks of rotational gameplay in this sim save. This was, I'm gonna be honest, more drama than I was expecting. After that first week with Paige, I was like, oh, I feel like if I make a video on this, it's not gonna be particularly exciting. But then jumping into Mitchell's perspective, oh my god, so much happened. That was so exciting. And I'm very, very both intrigued and excited and slightly concerned about where all of their stories are gonna go next. And I hope you are too. Let me know in the comments if there are any particular perspectives you'd be interested in me playing for a week. I am pretty keen to look at either Nina or Dina for a week. I also think looking at Dusty could be very fun, but I am very much open to suggestions. My next video will be going back to my WoW deep dive series. It'll be Hellfire Peninsula this time, the first of the Outland zones, and I'm very, very excited about it. But I 100% intend on coming back to this series as well. This channel contains multitudes. Anyway, that's all. Oh, I need to finish my tea first, actually. Hold on. Okay, now we're good.